Hello and welcome to another edition of On the Whistle. Sunderland 0, Bristol City 0. It's happened.
Yeah,
it was a football match that happened on Wearside this afternoon.
It won't live long in the memory, but
to be fair, I'm going to go straight in with a question from Josh because I think it probably gets the heart of it. He says, just simple, how on earth did we not win? Which I think we've got to be fair. We were obviously very, very critical of Sunderland's players on Monday. They were much, much better today, weren't they? I thought that first half especially, they probably should have been outside. I thought Bristol City were really poor, which obviously helps. Their quality and possession was very poor, but the intensity was much better. The pressing was really good. I thought Ekwa had his best game for quite a while, which is nice to see because it's been a bit frustrating his season. I think first half especially. Second half obviously was a much more even game, but there were some. I don't want to go overboard because they've drawn 0-0.
That should be the base level performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Really. But I suppose it's important to acknowledge as well that having been very rightly so, I think, critical on Monday, it was better. There were some fairly encouraging signs.
Somebody on Twitter put it to me. I think his name was Jim, and he summed it up magnificently. He said that performance today was a microcosm of our season. Early promise. Couldn't finish off the chances, ultimately a little bit disappointed because we didn't win.
I mean, that game was a lot more, in terms of summing up the season, that was a lot more like the Tony Mowbray era. Do you know what I mean? In terms of the performance was decent enough. Had they had a bit more cutting edge in the final third, then they would have got something out of the game, and I suppose that's a minor positive, that it was more like a Mowbray performance than a Beals / Dodds performance.
I know we touched upon it after the Blackburn Rovers game. We haven't spoken about it for ages because you don't, when you get 105 wrong, you tend to concentrate on the defence and overall performance, but the striking issue again, I just thought was really telling them. It was two on the bench and neither of them were trusted to come on at 0-0 to try and make a difference. I just think that is really telling at the moment.
Well, listen, and I know he's missed a couple of chances today, so there might be a bit of criticism, I don't know, or whatever, but if you take the 3 games since Job's gone back up front, really poor on Monday, but so was literally every player in the team, so you can't really dwell on that too much. But Job's been the best of the strikers by a long way, hasn't he? Easily. From what we've seen, and that is, quite damning. It sort of leads us on to my next question, actually, because Eddie's tweeted us asking about Speakman's future, and he makes the point about the 2 strikers not being ready to get on the bench, and that's that's a totally fair comment. Listen, we've I think talked quite a lot about Christian Speakman on this.
We have
on this video, on our podcast, in our copy. The season has been disastrous from sort of Mowbray's sacking onwards. Speakman is in charge of the football side. He has to be accountable for that, and he has a factor in that. What I will say is that getting rid of Christian Speakman will not change the ownership strategy. It will not change the way that they make certain decisions. And so for me, that means it's not the one thing that will change whether someone get promoted next season. That's my personal opinion. You can have your opinions on Speakman, that's fine. And certainly the recruitment over the last 2 windows, which has been significantly inferior to what has come before, and that's definitely fair to point out, I think. And there needs to be accountability for that. But I personally don't look at it, go and changing Christian Speakman is the thing that will make something better. I think the strategy from the very, very top needs to be tweaked. And once that is sort of relayed to Christian Speakman, then let's see what he does. Let's see if he can bring in those players when the parameters change. The other thing I will say is he needs to get the next head coach appointment.
Yes,
absolutely right, because I suspect that we know that Mowbray fell out a bit with the board level, and I think that made a big impact on the timing of the decision, which wasn't ideal. But Bale ultimately, is Speakman has to be accountable for that. So he has to get the next one right.
Speakman's made missteps this season. Really has. It's fizzling out, and that's due to decisions made at middle management and right to the top. Obviously, Speakman works under the parameters at board level that are set by the ownership, as you've just said. He's become a very divisive figure without really trying to be. He doesn't say divisive things. He says things that seem to provoke a reaction. Just looking at our latest YouTube video after the Blackburn Rovers game, you had people saying we were really balanced on Speakman. You had people saying that we weren't harsh enough. So I think it's one of those really where if you've got your opinion, you've got your opinion, and that's it. The one thing I will say about the head coach thing is, does Speakman have full authority on that head coach sort of appointment? Because we've seen in the past with who's fancied and who's not fancied. Ultimately that can come from above as well. So I do wonder about the decision-making process. I'm not trying to give Speakman an out. 100% made many a mistake this season. But I just get the feeling that for all the good structures that have been put in at Sunderland over the past couple of years, sometimes when it comes to the big decisions, it can be a little bit muddled. You see that off the pitch as well. I'll talk about it ad nauseum. The Black Cats bar, finger pointing, who signed off on that, who didn't. When it comes to the big things that need deciding at Sunderland, sometimes it goes a little bit awry. I don't know whose fault that is, but
I suppose, and I do think like it's
Oh my God! See, that was another good catch.
Storm Kathleen is wreaking havoc on the whistle. But look at us, brave fellows,
Brave sports
carrying on after our 0-0 draw and amid woeful conditions on Wearside. We're still doing our video. Listen, the point I'm making with Speakman is like, especially this season, the recruitment has been worse than at any point since he got over. The Beale decision was a massively incorrect one. You could even argue that sticking with Dodds hasn't worked. But the one thing I will say is if the strategy doesn't change and if the strategy isn't tweaked and you replace the sporting director, you're essentially asking another person to come in and work miracles on a limited budget
100%.
against Premiership, teams coming down to the Premier League. That's the one point I would make, I don't think changing one person is going to make a huge difference if you don't make subtle changes to the strategy. And that's not, I really don't want people to think we're trying to give Speakman an out, because especially the Michael Beale decision, I'm not convinced how much the timing of Mowbray's departure was his fault, and so I give him some slight leeway for that. Yeah. But ultimately, as a sporting director, he has to be accountable for Michael Beale.
100%.
And today was much more like what we, especially the first half, what we came to expect from Sunderland. They played some decent stuff. They created some chances. I quite enjoyed watching them. Second half didn't quite sustain it, but there is no reason why Sunderland weren't able to play like that for the last 3 months. That is, yes, injuries were a factor, but that's decisions from the football club that stopped that, and they are accountable for that. I don't want to get that mixed up, but I think it's a big debate. I think
it's a massive debate, and I think as well as we can have differences of opinion on this. I don't think just because we're not shouting blue murder sacking that means we haven't criticised them. I think if you look back over our copy, over our stuff on the Raw podcast on the Echo website, even over the On the Whistle videos, there's plenty of fair criticism there. I think sometimes, if somebody doesn't agree with you on one particular issue, doesn't mean actually that they haven't sort of criticised as well. I think some of it has to be fair. Anyway, that's just a personal thing. Back to the questions.
Yeah, back to the questions. So we've got another one, which is it's on a similar theme, which I think we did speak about on the last one, but let's get anyway. Stephen says, simply not good enough. We can spin all the positives we want, but it's not good enough. Why are KLD and Speakman in hiding? Listen,
get a round of applause from the fans down
here. I do think it's been a very good video, I have to say.
It's long overdue, somebody giving us a round of applause.
Listen, we said on Monday that we think it's really important that the season is addressed and there's some accountability from people at the top, and I definitely think we need to hear from Kura Louis Dreyfus at the end of the season. I think that's really, really important. So I just want to say, Stephen,
we don't was killed in January. It was killed. Yeah, killed dead. We didn't know it at the time necessarily, but looking back, hindsight 2020, the season was dead in January. Yeah, which is from where we were last season. It's simply not good enough.
So we want to say, Stephen, we don't think today was good enough. A 0-0 draw was quite tough to watch. We just felt it was slightly better than losing 5-1 to Blackburn.
You got to put it
that's
in
not
the
to say it's good. That's not to
game.
say it's good enough. I just felt that was a bit more of the Sunderland performance today. And yes, we agree with you that Christian Speakman, especially Kirill, need to speak to fans.
I think for large, I mean, you do have to sort of call things as you see. For large parts of that game, especially in the first half, I thought Sunderland were pretty good. As you mentioned, Bristol City maybe a little bit under par, but Ballard off the line. O'Leary had a blinder in goal. Jack Clark, I think if Jack Clark is maybe two or three more games into his comeback, I think he probably buries one of those chances. Bradley Dack, I think. Did O'Leary tip that onto the bar? Very possibly.
No, I don't think so. But he did out-Sheeshes at the other end, which was an unbelievable save.
So, it feels like, and it's a shame in a way, because I feel like if Sunderland had got that win today, it would have gone a long way to sort of repairing the damage from that 5-1 loss to Blackburn Rovers, which was shambolic, it was poor. One of the worst defeats ever at the Stadium of Light, really, in terms of a group not really turning up. A group that we're all very fond of as well, which I think is the most hurtful thing. It's a shame that they didn't get that winning goal today, but I think for me, you couldn't fault the attitude, the application, and the fact that they're actually still playing for Mike Dodds.
Yeah. A couple of other things I just wanted to mention before we go. Aji Elise looked excellent when he came on. If he stays fit and we can get Dennis Sainton back, that's a game changer for Sunderland for next season, because I think they're two top-end championship fullbacks. And they've been, if we go back to sort of since Elise's injury in January, they've been huge misses, haven't they? It's been a big factor in this team. We've never quite found a solution at left back, have we? Well, and again, that does come down to recruitment. No, it does. In January window as well, but those two are.
We play West Brom in a couple of weeks, and just thinking back to Dennis Sergen's brace to get Sunderland, into the playoffs last season, it was absolutely brilliant. He's a fantastic player. Aji as well. I think he gives height. We saw it when he was brought straight back in for the game against Newcastle, how highly he's rated. Physical presence. I think he complements Clark on the left as well. I think Yelder perhaps struggled today. I don't think he's a left back. I think we're judging him as a left back. I'm not sure he's a left back. I think he's probably going to be more of a centre back long term. I liked him after he debuted against Middlesbrough, but he's had a tough time with it.
He prefers centre back. He said that to the media, hasn't he?
Sunderland have had a tough time, so I'm loath to write him off. Really, he did struggle today. I think he was probably Sunderland's worst player, but it's not his position. So what can you do?
One last
It's
one.
like asking me to do your job, Phil. I'd never be able to do it.
Nobody would ever ask you to do my job, James. Nobody would ever ask you to do my job. Come on now.
One last one.
One last one. No, we were chatting there in the press conference with Mike Dodds, basically asking the question about how much is he going to look to get young players in over the last few games. Very little to play for, and I think it's a really interesting debate. I want to get your thoughts on it. Basically, what Dodds said to me in the press conference yesterday, and he reiterated again today, was, listen, after Monday's game especially, I feel a responsibility to get some performances and results out of this group. And I'm not going to experiment. I'm not going to give players opportunities. I'm not going to give them just so we can have a look at them. They have to earn their way into the team. What do you think?
I think he's got a very valid point, and I think it would have been a little easier had they not lost 5-1 against Blackburn Rovers to maybe ease some of those players in. We've seen them on the bench that haven't been brought on. The circumstances in those games haven't been right to bring them on either, because some of them have typically been like drawing or losing or not doing too well. So I completely get that. In terms of earning the way into the team, I watch a little bit of the 21s here and there, so does my colleague Joe Nicholson, and then you get the highlights when they're away from home. I think Tommy Watson's banging on the door personally. He's scoring goals. I mean, Harrison Jones has come back from an injury. He's captaining the side under the 21s. Against Leicester a couple of weeks ago, he got 2 goals and an assist. I think there are players there banging on the door. I do take his point. But if not now, when? Because there's nothing really to play for.
The one thing he did say is, look, I'm picking Chris Rigg every game, and he's 16.
Who deserves a mention. I can't believe we didn't mention him today, but he was very good.
And that's totally fair.
And it's a valid point. He is picking Chris Rigg.
I agree with you in terms of the one thing I will say with Watson is we know he hasn't had much training time because he's been playing under 21s off the back of an injury. But I agree with you. I think he's the one where I think, especially with potentially Clark going in the summer,
this is the thing.
Let's have a look at him. And I hope he gets a chance. But I think Dodds had to put out the strongest team he possibly could today. I think so. But I would like to see Watson get in the squad.
But for me today, obviously Clark, he's played 45 minutes since coming back from an ankle ligament injury, which is not insignificant. He played 90 minutes today. He was down on his haunches towards sort of the last 10 minutes of the game. I know it was 0-0. I know Sunderland, needed a result and couldn't really sacrifice that left-hand side of the pitch. But Tommy Watson on the bench comes on for the last 10 minutes, see what he can do. With Clark, coming back from an ankle ligament injury, I think that probably would have been smart, but it's not my job.
Yeah, no, I'd like to see what. The other thing I would say is that with the options he had to leave Barr out entirely today, which I was really surprised at.
And there's no injury there either.
Surely one of the if you didn't need all the defenders. I know Styles can play midfield as well, but surely
this is another question now I actually want to ask you as well, Phil, because Burstow's on the bench, and this is not a dig at Mason Burstow, and it's not me sort of singling him out, but he's a loan player. He is on loan. I know Mike Dodds might make some argument that tactically it's better to have Burstow on the bench, but why not have Harrison Jones on the bench over Burstow, or Tommy Watson on the bench over Burstow, or one of our own players? Is there some sort of clause where he's got to be involved in the matchday squad? I don't know. It just feels a bit weird to me. Are they going to try? Another question: are they going to try and sign him in the summer? Because they wanted to try and sign him last summer. I think that's a bizarre situation.
It looks strange when you don't bring him on at 0-0. I think that's really more the point. If you do use him, then I think that's slightly different. But I take your point. I certainly think that, especially, I can understand why Dodds took the way he did today, needing to win, hard to take Clark off when you know what he can do.
It is.
But I do agree with you, and I think it's really important. I'd really like to see Watson, especially, you mentioned Harrison Jones as well. I think another player who's done really well deserves a chance before the end of the season.
Ollie Bainbridge as well,
but I think,
right back.
I do agree with you, it's nothing personal with Merson Burstow whatsoever, but there comes a certain point where, you're not going to learn much, and you're probably not going to benefit much from including him at someone's expense. Will they sign him in the summer? I think, would that be right for any party?
No.
Not
what we've seen.
Mason's a young guy who came in with a lot of pressure, and I sympathise with him for that. But does everyone not need a bit of a fresh start in the summer? I think that's my feeling. But I agree with you. Certainly moving into the last 2 or 3 games, I think surely it's time to give some of those youngsters.
Well, I just want Mike Dodds to play some of those youngsters, because I wrote a piece saying the 5 players that Mike Dodds may play towards the end of the season. So I'm going to look a little bit silly if he doesn't play any of them.
There we go. You wondered how Sunderland nil, Bristol City nil was going to be all about James Copley, but we've managed to work it out. Well, I think that's 14 minutes. I wonder how many people have stuck with us from minute 0 to 14. But
I doff my cap to you.
Thank you very much. If you sat through 90 minutes of that and 40 minutes of us, then you
ask for your money back somewhere.
You've done very, very well. So listen, thanks James. It's been a pleasure as always. Thanks everyone for watching. We will be back with some form of On the Whistle after Leeds on Tuesday night.
Yes, hopefully.
We will see how things go, but there definitely will be some form of reaction. Yeah. And then we are away at West Brom next weekend.
West Brom away, yeah. Cheers, guys.
Let's see.